Part 25. My Father-in-Law. My father-in-law, who served in the military as a young man and fought in the Korean War, is now an old man. When I met him at first, he was in high spirits and was the commander of the local reserve forces. Every morning, he had a cold water massage in the valley of Mount Sorok near his house. Unfortunately, now he is suffering from dementia and has become too weak to take care of himself. When my father-in-law was 80, I prepared a special event. At that time, I had been learning how to play the saxophone. It was a little over a year since I started learning, so I was not good at playing saxophone, but I tried to play a military song at a gathering of my family and wanted to honor his service as a soldier in the country during the Korean War. Instead of a birthday celebration song, I played "A Torch for the Destruction of Communism" on my saxophone. All my family and relatives clapped vigorously. My father-in-law's niece's husband, who was a comrade in the army, seemed to be happy. He hugged and kissed me on the cheek. My father-in-law's nephews also said they were impressed with the event. My father-in-law and his niece's husband served in the artillery unit where I served. During the war, they served in the army together. My father-in-law received the Hwarang Order of Military Merit and was registered as a man of national merit by the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. I wanted to get an Order of Military Merit if I had a chance, but I only got a commendation from the principal of the Artillery Academy and the captain of my unit. I envy that I did not have a chance to receive a medal from my country. I always want to thank not only my father-in-law, but also the heroes of my country who sacrificed their lives in the Korean War to defend the Republic of Korea. These days, refugee problems are occurring all over the world. There are many refugees who die while drifting in the sea, or who cannot find a place to settle across the border of other countries. Even though we are not all nationalists, we should try to make sure that we all love and protect our country. Historically, our country was attacked by foreign countries. Moreover, our country was once ruled by or under the influence of neighboring powers. Even at that time, we were able to protect our people and our country because of the patriotic martyrs and patriots who fought with a spirit of sacrifice. We remember Admiral Yi Shun-shin, who protected the country during the Japanese invasion of Korea in 1592. We remember the independence fighters during the Japanese occupation. We should not forget the South Korean soldiers killed in the Korean War to protect the Free Republic of Korea, and the Allied forces who were dispatched and killed during the Korean War. Recently, inter-Korean and North Korean-U.S. dialogue has been taking place for denuclearization, and I hope both Koreas will have peace and prosperity. I wanted to look around Yeonggu, the place of Gangwon-do which I had never been to since I was discharged from the army. My father-in-law also said that he wanted to go back to where he fought during the Korean War, so we went there together. The opening of Gyeongchong Expressway made it easier for us to get there. There was a tunnel through the winding mountains that connected the road. If I had known, I should have been there earlier. My father-in-law's eyes glistened as I unfolded the map, seeing Hongcheon, Cholwon, Hwacheon, Inje, Wonthong, Yeonggu, and Gangwon-do. These are the places where I spent the golden years of my life. Looking back, when I was in the army, I was the most energetic and happy then. We stopped at the Pompous Rest area in Hongcheon before going on the road trip to Inje. It was drizzling, but the drizzle nearly stopped. We had Jeonseontung, sausage stew, for lunch, which my father-in-law used to have when he was a soldier. My mother-in-law had artificial joint implant surgery in both knees a few years before. She practiced walking so as not to fall down during the trip. Both of my parents-in-law were at home, lying down all day, staring at the ceiling. In the case of my father-in-law, I wondered where all the vivid energy he had before went. His teeth fell out and his mouth was loose. His muscles were loose, his hair was missing, his dark eyebrows were missing, and his eyes were gloomy with no brightness. The rain-soaked wooden steps were slippery, so I was afraid they would stagger and fall. My father-in-law had shown a great deal of emotional fluctuation for a few days. When he was in good physical condition, he talked as if he could go on a trip, but when he felt weak, he shook his head and said that he could not go there. My wife encouraged him to go on a trip, saying it would be able to cheer him up. We went along the road from Hapgang River to Phunri by passing through the town of Wangtong Inje. Along the road, a stream flowed under a cliff. The valley was flooded with rain for several days. The hills and valley along the side of the road meandered together to form a magnificent view. Dad, do you know where that place is? I don't know exactly. The Chinese soldier said Gosari. I was driving for a long time when I found a man sitting under a tree by the side of the road and stopped the car. Excuse me, where is Gosari? Ah, all around here is Gosari. My father-in-law's face brightened at the young man's words. There used to be a big rock in the stream. Would you know where that is? If you go about 1 kilometer from here, you can see a lot of rocks there. There is a big rock, half submerged in the water. Dad, do you think that's the place? I'm not sure, 'cause there has been a lot of change in 60 years. This area hasn't changed much, sir. There is only one big rock there. It may have changed a little because it is a valley, but the rock is probably the one you're looking for. My father had a narrow escape from this valley during the Korean War. Oh, I heard a lot of North Korean soldiers died in the Hapgang River down there. It is where the two rivers merge and the water is spinning there. We thanked him and got back into the car. After a while, I could see a valley full of rocks. The roadside stores had signs of rafting. My father-in-law approached the valley, looked down at the big rock, and also up at the mountain opposite. I think that's the rock. Our troops were attacked suddenly by Chinese forces in Phunri, and I was captured by them. 3 of them got into a jeep, and they told me to drive. I said I was poor at driving, but they didn't understand me. I could not help but grab the wheel, and drove the jeep along the winding road. On the way to the road, I turned the steering wheel and drove the jeep into the deep valley. I felt the same way whether I was taken or killed. I thought nothing was going to stop me then. My car hit that rock and got stuck in the water. It was May, and they were wearing warm clothes. When their clothes got wet, they were all floundering and could not get out of the valley water. Meanwhile, I was able to get out easily because I was dressed in work clothes. Across the valley, on the mountain, there was a Korean military camp. I ran up that mountain desperately, but thinking of it now, I don't know how I climbed that mountain. Dad, you were 23 years old at the time, so you must have been full of energy then. As my mother-in-law poked him on the side, his face was in full bloom. Thinking of what had happened more than 60 years before, he seemed to recall the moment when he was climbing the mountain. As if time had gone backwards and he was back to his youth, he suddenly turned red. The young people down there were rafting. 6 by 6, they swung around the rock in a yellow rubber boat and stopped there. The place seemed to be a rafting destination. The sign next to the road said Nirinchan Piazzi Valley. So, this is the famous Nirinchan Valley. We only thought that this valley was famous for rafting. I didn't know it was the place where Dad escaped from captivity. My mother-in-law said to me, "Thanks to my son-in-law, You made his wish come true. He wanted to come here once before he died. My parents-in-law wiped their tears with a handkerchief. We got back in the car. When I was in the military service 30 years before, I went through this road several times in a truck that towed a cannon for training. There was a large sandy plain down this road, where the artillery simultaneously laid more than 10 artillery guns, and I don't know where it is now. The sandy plain was more than 200 meters long. I have been looking down along the valley, but now there's no such large area. At that time, our battalion of 300 men built an artillery position and trained at night around here. Has the geographical features changed after a long time? 60 years had passed since my father-in-law fought there. 30 years had passed since I served in the army, but the waters of the Nirinchan stream were still flowing in their old ways. I thought of my father-in-law, myself, and those young men rafting who were 20 years old. I think it is a good thing for future generations to live well, but I resent the young people who act like they are falling from the sky, not thinking what their ancestors have done for them. I drove my car to Yeonggu past the point called Hapgang. The town of Yeonggu had changed a lot. The town was well organized, as if it had drew lines without disorder like any other village. In the town, the buildings were built in an orderly fashion along the road, not a tourist destination, so many people did not seem to visit the town. Several restaurants were closed. We managed to get into a restaurant where we could eat a meal with seasoned wild vegetables. The restaurant owner said the 3-story restaurant building was his own, and he was continuing the restaurant business because he was not burdened with rent. I said that my father-in-law fought here during the Korean War and came back with old memories. The restaurant owner was very pleased to hear my words. A week ago, 8 American veterans visited here. Thank you very much, sir. I think we are living comfortably now because of the generations before me. The restaurant owner's words melted away my feelings of disappointment about the young men's world.